Michael always loved mornings. Not because of the coffee, not because of the silence, but because of the feeling when the whole city is just waking up and you already have a goal. He lived in a small coastal town called Riverford, a place where time flowed slowly, like a lazy stream, and even the gossip of the old ladies on the bench sounded like part of the familiar background. Here, people knew each other by name, and secrets seemed impossible to keep for long. It seemed. Michael and Emma's house stood on a hill overlooking the bay. The white shutters, the lavender garden, the smell of freshly cut grass. Everything looked as if it had been cut out of an advertising brochure. The neighbors often said, "You and Emma are the perfect couple, just the embodiment of family happiness." Michael always smiled back. He really thought so. After all, what else is needed? A home, a beloved wife, a job that allows you to spend more time together. And, most importantly, trust. Every morning started the same way. He got up half an hour earlier to make coffee for both of them. Emma loved coffee with vanilla syrup and a drop of milk. Michael, on the contrary, drank black, strong, almost bitter. He liked watching her come out of the bedroom in his shirt, sleepy, with disheveled hair, smiling, stretching like a cat, and saying, "You're up earlier than you need to be again. Someone has to be the first to meet you," he replied, and she laughed softly. They had been living like this for 8 years, and Michael had never once doubted that he had made the right choice. Emma was not just a beautiful woman. She knew how to create an atmosphere of warmth around herself. Her flower boutique in the city center became popular not only because of her composition skills, but also because of her smile. People didn't come there for roses, but for a good mood. After breakfast, she usually hurried to the store, while Michael stayed at home with his laptop. He was engaged in IT projects and freelancing. His job allowed him to live in peace, without office fuss, but it also had a downside, a lot of time for reflection. Sometimes too much. During the day, the house was quiet, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the occasional cry of seagulls outside the window. At such hours, Michael caught himself thinking that not all men are able to withstand such calmness. But he was fine. He always believed that family life is not a firework, but a steady flame that needs to be protected. When Emma returned in the evening, she brought with her the scent of roses and lilies. Sometimes it's fatigue, sometimes it's inspiration. She talked about new clients, about girls who buy bouquets just to feel loved. Michael listened and thought, "I have no reason to be jealous. She's my man." Sometimes, however, in the silence of the house, it seemed to him that a shadow had settled between them. Not threatening, but barely perceptible. It's like someone invisible is standing in the corner of the room and watching them live. He pushed those thoughts away. After all, everything was perfect. Almost. In Riverford, everyone knew who lived what. People greeted and nodded as they passed by. No one was in a hurry, no one was hiding their eyes. But, as Michael later realized, these are the cities that are best at hiding the truth. Here, cheating can happen literally through the wall, and no one will know about it, until the truth comes knocking on the house with a notification on the phone. That morning, when everything was still calm, he looked at Emma and thought how lucky he was. He didn't know that this was the last month of his confidence, that soon the usual coffee will become bitter in the literal sense, that the trust on which he had built everything would collapse not from loud words, not from a quarrel, but from a single notification where it would be written, "The delivery is completed. Recipient, Emma. Address." But so far everything was as before. The bay glittered in the morning sun, swallows traced the sky, and in a house full of the smell of coffee and lavender soap, a man named Michael was sure that his wife was the most honest person in the world. He just didn't know that sometimes lies smell just like fresh flowers. Evening falls slowly in Riverford, as if the city doesn't want to let go of the sun. The air is thick with the smell of salt, spicy smoke from a nearby barbecue, and warm bread from the bakery on the corner. Michael closes the laptop and stretches. It's almost 8 o'clock. Emma will be back soon. He goes into the kitchen and puts the kettle on. The sauce is slowly bubbling on the stove. Today he decided to cook dinner himself. Something simple, pasta with tomatoes and basil, a glass of red wine. He loved cooking for her. He liked how she always reacted a little theatrically, as if she had seen not just dinner, but a whole gesture of love. When the door finally opens, he hears a bunch of keys ringing in the hallway and her taking off her heels in a hurry. "Oh, you're home." Her voice sounds soft, tired, but with a familiar smile. I thought you were still working. I decided to free up the evening, he replies, wiping his hands on a towel. We haven't had dinner together in a long time. Emma comes over, kisses him on the cheek, and exhales the scent of fresh flowers and perfume. There's a packing tape mark on her hand, and her nails are lightly dusted. He's smiling. He always liked that she wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty, that her job wasn't just a business, but a part of herself. How was your day? What is it? He asks as they sit down at the table. It's fussy, she says, pouring the wine. The clients are kind of nervous. One woman ordered a bouquet and then changed her mind 3 times. And all this within an hour. She speaks calmly, but he notices that her eyes are a little tired, as if there is something else behind this tiredness. And you? She takes a sip and looks him straight in the eye. Is everything according to plan? Yes. Work, phone calls. One customer delayed the payment again. Nothing new. They laugh and exchange a few phrases. Everything is as always. Only, now her phone flashes a lot. She doesn't take it out, but sometimes she takes a quick glance at the screen, as if checking who wrote it. Michael notices, but pretends not to. After dinner, they go out into the garden. At sunset, the purple lavender flowers appear silvery. Emma sits down on the bench, removes the elastic band from her hair. Do you remember, she says, looking out at the sea, how we moved here? I was afraid then that it would be boring. But it turned out to be the opposite. Everything is different here, for real. Yes, everything is simple here, Michael replies. There is silence between them, but not awkward, but seemingly peaceful. Although somewhere deep inside, he feels a strange feeling, as if she is mentally not here. It's like she's sitting next to him, but already preoccupied with something thoughts that have nothing to do with him. He looks at her profile, familiar to the smallest detail. The corner of her lips that always twitches a little when she's worried. A small mole near his neck, which he once called a point of attraction. It's all the same, but there is a slight detachment in her gaze. Are you okay? What is it? He finally asks. You look thoughtful. She flinches, as if she hadn't expected the question. Yes, everything is fine. I'm just tired. There are a lot of orders tomorrow, and suppliers are confusing the delivery time again. He nods, but he feels his anxiety stir a little. Suppliers, orders, work, words that can hide anything. Later, when they go to bed, Emma falls asleep quickly. Michael lies there for a long time, listening to her breathing steadily. The phone on her bedside table flashes, a short light from the notification. He sees the screen light up and go out. One moment, but there's a needle in her chest. Why didn't she turn off the sound as usual? Why did the screen light up 3 times in the last 10 minutes? He banishes thoughts. Don't go crazy, he says to himself. They're just clients. Her job. But sleep doesn't come. The next morning, everything looks normal again. Emma sings as she gets ready for work, dries her hair, and chooses a dress. She laughs and hugs him goodbye. I'll be late today, she says, tying her scarf. A large shipment has arrived. We need to sort it out. Of course, he says calmly. Do you want me to pick you up tonight? She hesitates a little. No, you don't have to. You'd better get some rest. Maybe I'll come by myself later. When the door closes behind her, the house falls back into its usual silence. But now there's something different about her. It was as if the usual warmth had been removed from this silence. Michael sits down at his laptop, but no work is going on. My thoughts stubbornly return to her words. Party. Suppliers. I'll be late. He opens the calendar. Today is Thursday. She was also late last Thursday. And the day before last. He didn't think much of it then. But now the numbers are forming a strange pattern. The day passes slowly. In the evening, when the clock shows 9, he writes her a message. Where are you? Is everything okay? The answer comes in a few minutes. Yes, everything is fine. I'll finish and go home. Don't wait if you're tired. He smiles at the screen, but his heart sinks. She had never added that don't wait before. Around midnight, the door opens. Emma enters quietly, takes off her shoes so as not to wake her up. But he's not sleeping. You're late, he says, pretending to have just woken up. Yes, the delivery was delayed there. Sorry. She kisses him on the forehead and goes into the bathroom. Michael hears the sound of water, then the rustle of clothes. And she can smell it. It's strange, harsh, unlike her perfume. Do you have a new perfume? What is it? He asks when she lies down next to him. She smiles sleepily. The client gave it to me. He nods. Beautiful smell. Thank you, she whispers and turns away. Michael lies in the dark, staring at the ceiling. His arms are folded across his chest, as if he's holding something back inside. Maybe I'm just being mean. Maybe it's really a job. Maybe it's just a new perfume. But somewhere deep inside there is a tiny crack, barely noticeable, almost invisible. And in this crack, the first word that he is afraid to even utter in his mind is born. Doubt. On Saturday morning, the smell of fresh pastries came into the house. Emma baked a pie, her favorite hobby, which she almost abandoned because of the store. The kitchen was a cozy mess. Bowls, whiskers, flour on the counter, and somewhere under the radio, a Norah Jones song was softly purring. "We have guests today," she said, stirring the filling. "Guests?" Michael raised an eyebrow, continuing to type on his laptop. "Sarah's coming. She said she missed you. And maybe John will come by tonight." "John?" He smiled. "Well, of course. No feast is complete without it." John was their neighbor and an old friend of Michael's. Tall, slightly careless, with an eternal 3-day stubble and an endless supply of jokes. He lived across the street, helped Michael with repairs, often dropped in for a minute, and always stayed for a couple of hours. A bachelor who was considered an underrated treasure by the women in the neighborhood. Sarah, Emma's younger sister, was the exact opposite of her. If Emma is gentleness, calmness, and restraint, then Sarah is a whirlwind of emotions. A journalist, a traveler, always in search of new experiences. Her life is a continuous change of continents and coffee shops. She rarely came to Riverford, but she always appeared unexpectedly, like the wind. When Sarah entered, the house seemed to be filled with movement. "Sister," she exclaimed, hugging Emma. "You're still the same, well-groomed. God, it's beautiful here." "Michael, you're spoiling her, aren't you?" "I'm trying," he replied with a smile. Sarah laughed and looked at them with interest, as if analyzing whether everything was really as perfect as it looked. Her gaze lingered on Emma a little longer than usual. "Your eyes are tired," she said suddenly. Emma waved her hand. "Just a lack of sleep. It's the wedding season, and there are a lot of orders." "Oh, by the way," Sarah snapped her fingers. "I saw your Instagram page. You have such a cute flower partner there. What's his name? Lucas?" Michael froze slightly. It was the first time he had heard that name. Emma smiled quickly, tightly. "Yes, Lucas Reed. He's a supplier. We have a contract with his company. A very reliable guy. Judging by the photo, he's not the only reliable one," Sarah added with a grin. "He's in every other photo next to you." "Sarah," Michael said softly, but with emphasis, "can we not turn dinner into an interrogation?" The nurse raised her hands. Okay, just kidding. I'm just curious." Emma smiled, but her smile was strained. Michael noticed how she lowered her eyes, pretending to be busy serving dishes. John came in the evening. "Well, a family of perfect people. Who's raiding the kitchen?" he shouted from the doorway. He brought wine and some pies from a local bakery. The atmosphere quickly became light. Conversations, laughter, jokes. Sarah, as always, enlivened everyone around her. John told stories from his youth. Only Emma was increasingly distracted by her phone. She seemed to do it automatically, but Michael could see that her eyes trembled a little every time a message arrived. "Is everything okay?" "What is it?" he asked quietly, while the others were discussing the movie. "Yes, just for work." She replied quickly and hid the screen again. Hearing this, Sarah narrowed her eyes a little, but said nothing. Later, when the guests had left, Michael began to clear the table. Emma stood at the window, staring out into the darkness. "Your sister is a storm, as always," he chuckled. "Yes," she replied absently, "but it's boring without her." "Listen," he said, wiping the glasses. "This Lucas. Who is he anyway? You haven't talked about him before." She turned around as if she hadn't expected the question. "Just a supplier. We've been working together for a couple of months. He brings flowers directly from Italy. Very profitable. Do you meet often?" "If necessary. Sometimes we have lunch if we need to discuss the assortment. Everything is strictly business related." He nodded, but her voice sounded too even, like a learned answer. The next day, after Emma left, Sarah stopped by Michael's place to say goodbye before leaving. "She's nervous," she said, not sitting down. "Your wife. Something is gnawing at her. Do you think it's because of work?" "I don't know. But she has eyes like a person who lives in two realities. One is for everyone, the other is inside." Michael frowned. "You're just overreacting." Emma is not one of those who play. Sarah sighed. I hope you're right. Just pay attention, okay? Sometimes we get to know people anew when it's too late. He wanted to answer, but she was already heading for the door. Before leaving, she threw over her shoulder. And don't let her get tired of losing herself. Otherwise, someone else will definitely give her something that you don't notice. Those words stuck in Michael's head like a splinter. He didn't want to give them any importance. But that night, when Emma said, I'll be late, don't wait, he suddenly remembered Lucas's face from the very photos Sarah had mentioned. Tall, confident, with the look that men use to look at women other than as colleagues. Michael waved it away. No, nonsense. It's just a coincidence. He tried not to think about it. But from that day on, the name Lucas began to sound in his head too often. A week has passed. One evening, returning home from shopping, Michael saw Emma near the flower shop. She was standing outside and talking on the phone. Her face was tense, but at some point she smiled. Not the smile he knew. Not homely, soft, but different, as if there was something secret, personal about her. When she noticed him, she flinched. Oh, you're here? She said it too loudly. I was just going to call you. No need. I decided to stop by myself, he replied calmly. But inside he already felt that same cold premonition. He didn't ask any questions. But that night, when she went to bed and her phone lit up in the dark again, for the first time he thought about more than just doubt. He thought that maybe trust was a luxury that shouldn't be given without verification. It's been a week since that morning when Michael first felt something strange in the air, as if a transparent wall had appeared between him and Emma. He couldn't explain what was wrong. Everything looked the same as always. She was smiling, kissing him goodbye, talking about clients, laughing at his stories. But something has changed, not externally, but internally. There was something in her gaze that he couldn't decipher, slight worry or hidden tiredness. Or maybe it was just that autumn was coming into its own and everyone was in a bad mood. He tried not to dwell on it. Sometimes he even scolded himself. You're a grown man, Michael. Stop looking for shadows where there's light. But something like an alarming mosquito has arisen inside, which buzzes softly, but does not stop. That evening, he returned home earlier than usual. I decided to make a surprise. Cook dinner, light candles, play her favorite music, light jazz. He knew that Emma usually returned around 7. At 6 o'clock in the evening, everything was ready. At 6:30, he began nervously checking his phone. At 7, he went out onto the veranda, looking at the road. Cars drove by, the wind rustled through the leaves. Emma wasn't there. She arrived at almost 8. She got out of the car, noticing the lighted candles outside the window, and smiled. Too quickly, too superficially. Did you decide to surprise me? What is it? She asked, taking off her coat. I just wanted to spend the evening with you, he replied, trying not to sound slightly offended. Sorry, I was late. There was a supplier, a new order of flowers. Everything was so sudden, I couldn't leave. He nodded. Everything looked plausible. But when she bent down to kiss him, he smelled. Not the usual flowers, not perfume, but the light scent of someone else's men's cologne. It was unusual, bittersweet, and not at all the kind that usually hung in her store. Maybe one of the clients just brushed her shoulder? He thought, but the thought stuck. And when he lay next to her at night, listening to her even breathing, it seemed to him that he could hear the echo of that smell, as if it had eaten into the air, into the pillow, into his consciousness. The next day, he decided to test himself, to prove that he had just screwed up. I walked into her boutique, as if by accident. Emma was surprised, but pleased, or pretended to be. What are you doing here in the middle of the day? I wanted to see how you work, he smiled. She laughed, hugged him, showed him new compositions. Everything looked perfect. The cozy interior, flowers in glass vases, a notebook with orders on the counter. No strange looks, no hints. But he noticed that when her phone rang, she instantly hid the screen with her hand. Customer, she said quickly and went into the back room. She returned a minute later with a strained smile. That was the first time Michael sensed that she was hiding something. And this something was not a trifle. He didn't ask any questions. He knew that you can't accuse without proof. But something was already forming inside that would later grow into distrust, jealousy, and pain. He tried to distract himself with his work, but his thoughts revolved around one thing. Why was she lying? Every late-night call she made now made him uneasy. Every laugh she had on the phone seemed forced. And every, I'm tired, I just want to sleep, sounded like avoiding conversation. After a few days, he noticed a new habit. She started carrying her phone with her even in the shower. I used to leave it on the bedside table, but now it's everywhere. One night, while she was sleeping, her phone flashed with a notification. Michael turned around and saw a short message on the screen. I can't stop thinking about yesterday. The sender was simply signed. A. He froze. His fingers involuntarily reached for the phone, but he stopped. He didn't touch it. He lay staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in a long time, he felt cold. The cold is not from the window, but from the realization that perhaps everything is not as it seems. The next morning, Emma behaved as usual, smiling, telling him about the new delivery, kissing him on the cheek. He was silent. He couldn't even ask a question because he was afraid of the answer. He decided to convince himself that he was mistaken. That E is a client, or an employee, or anyone else. But somewhere deep inside, he already knew that the truth wasn't hidden in words. She hides in the little things. And these little things began to come together into a single picture. Michael never considered himself a jealous person. He always believed that trust is the foundation of love. And if you start digging into phones and watching, you lose not only your partner, but also yourself. But after that night's message, it was as if someone had erased his calmness with a rubber band. It didn't disappear right away. It just gradually dissolved, like sugar in cold water. He began to notice things he hadn't seen before. For example, when Emma is on the phone, she turns to the window and lowers her voice. Or how a new silver pendant with a tiny stone appeared on her neck. When he asked where he was from, she answered without hesitation. A client gave it to me as a thank you. Michael nodded. But after a minute I realized that she had always shown such gifts with pride before. Look how cute. And I just mentioned this one. She seemed to be making excuses. At first, he convinced himself that everything was fine, that she was just tired, that she was stressed, that the flower business was not sugar. But when a lie enters the house, it first smells like an excuse. On the third day after that unfortunate message, he decided to conduct a small experiment. He told Emma that he had to leave for a day in a neighboring city, ostensibly to meet with a client for work. She didn't mind. She was even happy. Great, I'm just going to spend the day at the store. We have a new delivery. But instead of leaving, Michael parked near her boutique. He was sitting in the car, watching the shop window. Emma actually came in at 9 in the morning, opened the door, and let the staff in. Everything looked casual. The hours passed slowly. He was already starting to feel stupid. What am I doing, for God's sake, spying on my own wife? When I noticed, around noon, she closed the door, hung up the sign "break," and went out. 1. I got into the car. I drove not towards the warehouse, not home, but to another part of the city, to where there was a small cafe on the embankment. He followed from a distance. I got in the car opposite. Through the shop window, I saw her enter the cafe and hug someone. Man medium height, dark hair. They sat down at a table by the window. Emma was laughing. She laughed like she hadn't laughed with him in a long time. Michael felt something icy growing in his chest. He couldn't believe it. Maybe it's a client. Maybe a friend. But an inner voice was saying, you know that's not true. He sat there for almost an hour. When they left, the man bent down and touched her cheek. Not a kiss, not a gesture of passion, something much worse. It was natural, as if that's how it should be. It's like it's not a secret, but a habit. Emma got in the car and drove back to the boutique. Michael remained sitting, looking at the street where people were passing by, where life flowed as if nothing had happened. He wanted to scream, but not at her, at himself. Why haven't I seen this before? Why did you believe blindly? He didn't say a word that night. He was sitting in the living room when she returned, smiling, with a bag of rolls from their favorite bakery. I thought you'd like them, she said. Thank you, he replied calmly. She talked about the store, about flowers, about little things, and he listened and saw how lies flowed between them like an invisible river. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the tea down. He realized that she felt that he was suspicious. That night, he couldn't sleep for a long time. I lay next to her, listening to her turn over and sigh. And for the first time in his life, he felt disgusted, not at her, but at the very concept of lying. She's nearby, but somewhere in another world. He could touch her shoulder, but he couldn't reach her soul. The next day, he went to a workshop where phones were being repaired and asked her to install a program on her smartphone that automatically copies notifications from her account when she connects to Wi-Fi at home. He hated himself for it. But the hatred of deception was stronger. He didn't want to incriminate. He wanted to understand why. Why is the woman with whom he shared a house, shelter, and memories now sharing her time with someone else? What went wrong? What didn't he give her? Or maybe she just got used to comfort and decided to look for feelings on the side. A few days later, when the program started working, he received the first notification. The same delivery store where she often ordered flowers for a customer sent a message. Your order has been delivered. Recipient, Emma. Address, Kingston Street, 8-inch. But Kingston 8 wasn't their address. It was the address of an apartment in the same area where the cafe was located. Michael looked at the screen and realized it wasn't a coincidence. She sent herself flowers. To someone else's address. He was sitting in the dark, and for the first time he said aloud, Jesus, Emma, why? At that moment, something died inside him. Not love, it doesn't die instantly. Trust has died. And when trust dies, it doesn't matter who's to blame. Both become strangers. After that evening with the notification, Michael sat in the kitchen for a long time without turning on the light. Only the dim glow from the phone screen illuminated the table where they had once laughed, planned trips, and dreamed. Now it was just a table. The space between them had become huge, even though they were still living under the same roof. He didn't make a scene. He understood that if he asked her directly, she would deny it, and if she showed evidence, she would cry and say it was a mistake. Emma was smart. She knew how to feel the mood, adjust, extinguish conflicts even before they flare up. Michael knew that it was necessary to act differently, quietly, subtly, wisely. The first thing he did was regain his composure. He became what he used to be again, calm, attentive, gentle. He knew that any emotion would give her a signal. He understood something. Now every conversation was a game where he kept his face up, and there was a chess match going on inside. One day at dinner, he asked, "Have you ever thought that we've been talking less over the years?" Emma looked up, slightly surprised. "Why do you think that? We used to share everything. And now you're often in a hurry, turning away when you're on the phone." She smiled. "I'm just tired, Michael. Work, clients. Sometimes I want to be alone. It's not about us." "Alone? What is it?" he asked softly. "Or just not with me." She froze for a second, a brief moment that couldn't be noticed unless you looked carefully. But he was watching. The pupils barely flickered, the gaze slid to the side, then back to him. "Nonsense," she said, and smiled a little too confidently. Michael nodded as if he believed her. But inside he understood. She didn't tell the truth. "I didn't lie outright, but I didn't tell you honestly either. This is the art of betrayal, not to lie, but simply not to speak." The next day, he decided to take another step. "I sent her a text at lunch. Honey, I want to order a surprise for you, but I don't know where you are right now. At the store or at home?" She answered almost immediately. "I'm in the store. It's a busy day. Then I'll go to the supplier. Don't wait for me for dinner." He chuckled. "I checked the surveillance camera that I installed a few years ago at their store for security. At 2:05 p.m., Emma was actually there. She left at 3:10 p.m. At 3:40 p.m., her car stopped not at the warehouse, but at the very house on Kingston 8. She stayed there for 2 hours. Michael didn't follow. I didn't want to see it. It was enough for him to know. When she returned in the evening, she looked tired but strangely inspired. He sat with a glass of wine and watched her take off her coat. "How was your day?" "What is it?" he asked calmly. "It's difficult. The supplier had a mix-up with the invoices, so I had to figure it out." "It's his fault again," he nodded, taking a sip of wine. "You must be very tired." "Very much," she replied, sitting down next to him. He handed her a glass. "For your hard work." They clinked glasses. And for a second it seemed to him that everything was almost the same as before. But now he felt that every breath she took was fake. Every gesture is learned. He sat there, listening to her talk about clients, and mentally noted every discrepancy. She hadn't noticed. Or she pretended not to notice that he was different. Later that night, when she was asleep, he turned on his phone again. Messages. "You were especially beautiful today. I can't forget your eyes." The answer is, "You always know what to say. See you soon, Red Heart." Michael reread these lines several times. And he didn't feel angry, just the emptiness. Because at that moment, he realized there was nothing left to fight for. But he wasn't going to ruin everything at once. He wanted to see how far she would go. Understand how betrayal works when it is hidden under the mask of love. The next day, he decided to test her again, not through technology, but through her heart. He came to her store with a bouquet of white roses. "Just like that," he said. "So you know that I remember how beautiful you are." Emma was taken aback. For a second, her eyes twinkled, not with joy, but with fear. It was as if the gift had made her feel guilty. "Thank you," she whispered. "You always know how to surprise." He looked straight into her eyes. "And I'll surprise you more than once, Emma. I promise." She smiled, but there was something unsettling in her gaze. Michael understood. She feels that he knows something, but I'm not sure how much yet. And that gave him an advantage. From that moment on, the game started. Not for revenge, not yet, but for the sake of truth. To see how lies manifest themselves when she thinks no one is watching her. After several days of observation, Michael realized that doubt was too soft a word for what he was feeling now. It was something sharp and concrete, like a cold needle in my chest. He couldn't just wait any longer. In the evening, when Emma went to the store for her last order, Michael sat down at his laptop. He opened the program he had installed on his phone and began examining all the notifications copied from her account. At first, everything looked like the usual flower delivery messages. But then he saw one detail that made his heart skip a beat. A repeating address, Kingston Street, 8. It was the address of the apartment she had visited a few days ago. He checked the time. Each notification coincided with the hours when she informed him that she was late at the supplier. He felt a chill down his spine. "That's it," he muttered, clenching his fist. The next step was painfully slow. He began to analyze the messages, looking for names, phrases, and repeated words. And soon I came across a short text message. "Yesterday was great. I look forward to the next meeting. Will you be alone tonight? I can't stop thinking about your eyes." The sender was marked only as E, the first letter of the name. Michael looked at the photos on Emma's phone and remembered that Sarah had mentioned Lucas, the supplier from Italy. He began to connect the dots. Every notification, every gift, every phone call, all went in one line. When Emma returned in the evening, he almost knew the whole picture. She was smiling and talking about the new order. He held on. Inside there is a storm, outside there is calm. "Have you talked to Lucas a lot in recent days?" "What is it?" he asked calmly, although his voice was slightly trembling. She froze, her eyes widening. But after a split second, the smile returned. "Well, we discussed supplies. Working moments. Nothing special." Michael nodded, pretending to believe. But in fact, he had already seen it. He saw every inconsistency, every little lie, every hidden smile. That night, when she was sleeping next to him, he turned on his phone again and reread all the messages. Inside, he no longer felt love. He felt empty and betrayed. But with it came a strange surge of power. Now he realized that he knew the truth. He remembered moments that had seemed random before. Her sudden meetings, late-night calls, gifts from clients. Everything fit into a logical picture. And now he was faced with the question, what to do with this knowledge? Michael understood that revenge would not provide relief. But the truth is, yes. And he decided that he first needed to collect the evidence to the end before making decisions. He scrolled through the messages, took pictures of the notifications, and wrote down the details. Every little thing mattered now: delivery time, address, text message, gifts. He felt that it was like a puzzle that he hadn't noticed for a long time, and now it was going to form a picture that was impossible not to see. And for the first time in a long time, he realized that he could no longer trust. He didn't know what would happen next, but he already understood that any movement of Emma was now under his supervision. And there was a cruel order to this observation. He became the master of the truth. It's been a long night. Michael was awake. He reread all the messages, made schedules for meetings, remembered smells, smiles, glances. He understood one simple thing. When trust collapses, it does not recover instantly. Even if he wants to believe again, the memory of betrayal will live on in him forever. The next morning began with the usual noise of the city. The wind rattled on the windows, cars drove along the pavement, the kettle whistled on the stove. But there was a special silence in Michael and Emma's house. Total silence that seems louder than any words. Michael was sitting at a table with a laptop. A cup of coffee was cold in his hands. His eyes were fixed on the screen. He reviewed the messages, notifications, photos again, every little touch. And everything was coming together in one clear picture. He knew the name now. Lucas Reed. The same supplier from Italy that Sarah mentioned. The man with whom Emma spent time secretly, met, talked, shared smiles that Michael had previously thought were meant only for him. Michael felt a mixture of disgust, pain, and a strange curiosity. He remembered those moments when she went to the supplier, when she returned with an unfamiliar scent on her clothes, with a slight tiredness in her smile, with new stories that she did not tell. And now he saw the whole pattern: days, hours, addresses. Everything matched. He imagined Lucas, confident, tall, with dark eyes, with a slight grin, with which a man easily wins the attention of a woman. It was such a person who could mislead Emma. It was such a person who became for her what was missing in everyday life, which Michael did not notice. Michael spent hours collecting data: photos of flower delivery notifications, SMS with the address of the apartment at Kingston 8, coincidence of meeting times, the little gifts that the clients left for her. Every stroke is proof. Every notification is a brick in the wall of betrayal. He understood that this was not just a novel. It's a system, well thought out and hidden. Emma wasn't just dating Lucas. She had built her life so that Michael wouldn't notice. And she was good at it. Michael looked at the photos from his phone and remembered their days together. Every look, every evening when she laughed, he analyzed anew. And the feeling of betrayal grew. He felt like he had lost something important. Not the house, not the things, not the status. He had lost the truth about the person he loved. But with the pain came understanding. Cheating doesn't start with a kiss, he whispered to himself. It starts with small things, with untruths, with artificial silence. He remembered the gifts she allegedly received from clients. Now it's clear that each of them was connected to Lucas. Every smile, every deviation of the gaze is a hint of a secret connection. A sense of control bubbled up inside Michael. He's not just a victim anymore. He knew, he saw, he understood. He thought about it. Which is more important, to reveal the love that has become a lie, or to preserve the remnants of reason without completely destroying yourself? Michael understood that in order to move on, he needed to collect everything to the end, see the full picture, and only then take steps. And now he saw that Lucas wasn't just a lover. He was a tool in a game that Michael didn't want to play, but was involved in against his will. That evening, for the first time in his life, Michael sat down and thought about how betrayal is not just about physical intimacy. It's about attention, trust, days together, words that should be true, but turn out to be false. He stared at the blank screen, at the notifications from Kingston 8, and for the first time allowed himself to say aloud inwardly, "I know everything." And this knowledge brought not relief, but heaviness. The burden of choice. What to do with this knowledge when the person you love is already living a different life? Emma returned home later than usual. The store was already closing, the last customers had left, and the street seemed empty. She walked, thinking about every step, every message, every call. Inside, there was a mixture of fear and excitement, but on the outside, there was her usual calm smile. She felt that Michael had changed. He became more attentive, more careful, as if he was scanning her every gesture. And she knew he understood something. It wasn't a direct accusation. It was a subtle look that you only see when you know yourself too well. In the evening, when she entered the house, he was sitting in the living room, holding a cup of coffee, as if nothing had happened. "Hi," she said in a familiar voice. "Hello," he replied calmly. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't scream. That was what made Emma feel anxious. Because silence sometimes says more than any words. She sat down next to him, trying to have a normal conversation, but her mind was on something else entirely. He knows. He saw it. He understood. She remembered notifications, messages, meeting times, everything. Lucas's smiles, light laughter, and his attention to her came back to her. She understood that Michael had seen the whole picture, and now all her art of hiding the truth was under threat. A whole monologue was playing inside her. What to do? Should I tell the truth or continue playing the game? If I tell him, he'll judge me, he'll suffer. If I don't say anything, he already knows. And that's the worst part. She decided to act in the usual way, to remain calm and behave as usual. But every gesture, every word, was now being mentally verified. Isn't it too warm? Isn't it too cold? Is it too obvious that I'm nervous? She put the kettle on and pretended to look for something on the shelves. "Are you working on a new project?" "What is it?" she asked with a slight smile. "Yes," he replied. "I'm trying to figure out my plans for next week." He was watching. She knew he was watching. And at that moment, she realized that he had become not just a husband. He had become an inquirer of her soul. Emma sat down next to him, quietly, almost imperceptibly, pressing her hands to the cup. For the first time, she felt fear that did not go away behind a smile or a business mask. "Do you think something?" "What is it?" she asked softly, checking her voice for alarm. "No," he replied, looking straight into her eyes. "I'm just thinking." She realized that deception was no longer working. Even if she tries to hide meetings, smiles, messages, he knows. Inside her was the first moment of true self-recognition. She realized that she could not continue to lead a double life without feeling guilt, fear, and tension. And although she hadn't said the words, "I was with Lucas," yet, for the first time she honestly looked at herself and what she had done. The night passed without words, but for Emma it was more meaningful than all the conversations in recent months. She knew that tomorrow would be a day of choice. A choice between her usual life and what she had created herself. A choice between love and deception. And at that moment, sitting next to Michael, she felt the weight of her secret for the first time. For the next few days, Michael lived as if on the edge of two worlds. During the day, he was an ordinary husband, helping with orders, discussing plans, and going to work. But all the time the thought was rustling inside him. What's today? Where is she? With whom? He continued to study the notifications and messages, and gradually the picture became clearer. Lucas didn't just show up suddenly. He planned everything in advance. Michael saw that every order, every delivery, every meeting with Emma coincided with his personal observations. Lucas knew her habits, her schedule, and created the perfect conditions for their meetings to look like everyday life. Michael thought back to last week. Morning. Emma leaves the store, ostensibly to the supplier. It's noon. The message. It's okay, I'll be back soon. After lunch. She gets in the car, drives down a quiet street to an apartment on Kingston. Lucas is there. Meeting. Light conversation, smiles, a nod, moments together that didn't look like cheating, but were. Michael saw it through notifications, through the time log, through coincidences. He had seen Lucas's agility, how he could mask every move. And he understood, this is not an accident. This is a cold strategy. He reviewed the photos of the notifications. Each of them was part of the route. Flower delivery time, address, text. I can't wait for the next meeting. Everything matched the hours when Emma had told him about work. Michael realized that Lucas was turning her ordinary days into his game moves. Emma didn't always want to be there. She wanted comfort and attention. But Lucas knew how to manage the situation, how to remain invisible to Michael but influential to Emma. In the evening, he met Emma in the living room. She looked tired but satisfied. "It's been a long day," she said. "Lots of customers, lots of orders. Are you sure that everything is only in the store?" Michael asked quietly. She sighed and smiled. "Yes, Michael." But he saw a thought flash in her eyes. He knows something. Michael was silent. He wasn't going to accuse. He just watched as she tried to hide behind the usual words, as Lucas made her dependent on this secret world. A sense of control seethed inside him. He knew that her secret meetings took place in one place, an apartment on Kingston. He knew that Lucas was not a random person, but the organizer of this entire network. And most importantly, he knew that Emma didn't give herself the right to make mistakes while she was in his presence. Michael realized that now the game was being played not only for him, but for her. Her every action, every smile, every step is part of the performance in which he was a spectator. That night, as they sat together, he felt for the first time that betrayal was not just a moment of physical betrayal. It's a chain of small decisions that add up to one big truth. And therein lies the real pain. Michael wasn't going to ruin the show right away. He knew that he had to wait, collect the evidence completely. He realized that when trust disappears, every word becomes a weapon, every action a confirmation of the truth. He watched Emma quietly, feeling the weight of betrayal and at the same time a strange satisfaction. Now he knows. Now he sees the whole game, all Lucas' tricks, all the tricks by which Emma's secret life existed under his nose. And for the first time, he allowed himself the thought, this game will end, but the consequences will be severe for everyone. It's been a few days since Michael fully mapped out Emma and Lucas meetings. He saw the sequence of events. Every detail, every route, every little thing. Everything came together into a complete picture. But he needed indisputable proof to make sure that the truth was finally there before making a decision about the future. He turned on the notification program on his phone again and checked the message archive. Suddenly, he noticed a new notification. "I'll meet you tonight. Waiting for you. Red heart." The sender is the same mysterious E. The time coincided with when Emma said she was late at the store. Michael felt a chill in his chest. He couldn't believe the coincidence. He decided to proceed cautiously. In the evening, he entered the store earlier than usual. He pretended to check the supplies, communicate with the staff. Everything is as usual. Emma arrived about 15 minutes later. Her smile was familiar. Her voice was light and familiar. "Michael, I've just sorted out the orders. I'm so tired." "I understand," he nodded calmly. But now he was analyzing her every word, every gesture. When she went out for tea, Michael quietly took out his laptop and opened the message card marked with time and address. He saw that at that moment Emma really wasn't in the store, but at Kingston 8. He quickly found a photo with a notification about the delivery of flowers to this address, matching the time with her absence from the store. And one more confirmation, a short message from Lucas, which accidentally appeared on Emma's screen. "I'll see you in 10 minutes. Michael had no doubts now. He saw every move, every message, every meeting. Emma didn't just hide the connection. She created a network of little lies and masks that allowed her to spend hours with Lucas under the guise of ordinary life. That evening, for the first time, Michael felt completely lucid. He was no longer guessing. He saw the whole truth. And with the truth came pain, sharp, sharp, like a cut that cannot be healed instantly. He realized that trust had been destroyed, and that now love, no matter how strong it may be, will not be able to exist the way it used to. But with the pain came an understanding. Now he had the power. Power over the situation, over the choice, over the consequences. He looked at the screen, at every proof, at every route, at every message, and for the first time allowed himself to say inwardly, "Everything is clear." He felt no malice. He didn't want revenge yet. He just knew. He knew who had betrayed his trust, who was involved in it, and how it happened. And it was at this moment that he realized, now it is impossible to act spontaneously. Any decision must be considered and wise. He closed his laptop, got up, and, looking at the quiet house, thought, "Tomorrow a new chapter will begin. But she will never be the same again." The next evening was quiet. Michael had prepared for the conversation in advance. He was sitting in the living room, with printouts of notifications, screenshots of messages, and a list of all the address and time matches on the table in front of him. When Emma returned from shopping, he didn't say a word. She glanced at the table, at the papers, but decided not to notice. It was as if she hadn't seen them. "How was your day?" "What is it?" she asked, trying to maintain her usual tone. "Let's sit down," Michael said calmly, without looking up from the documents. Emma sat down across from him. He carefully placed all the evidence in front of her. Notifications, screenshots of messages from E, the address of Kingston 8, and coincidences with the time of her absence from the store. She froze. "Michael." The voice trembled, but the attempt to remain calm was visible. "Emma," he said softly, "I don't want to scream. I don't want to accuse. I just want to understand why." Emma looked at the documents, at the evidence, at his eyes. She understood that any attempt at justification would be powerless. She began, but the words stuck in her throat. Michael continued, "You've been dating Lucas. And more than once. I know when and where. Every time you said, 'I was late at the suppliers,' it was a lie. Every message is a part of a secret life that I was not a part of." Emma sat down, lowering her eyes. For the first time, she didn't try to smile. She didn't try to justify herself. She began softly. I was lonely." Michael was silent. He didn't want to interrupt. He wanted to hear the truth. "I didn't think you'd find out," she whispered, and I didn't know what to do." At that moment, Michael realized that the destruction of trust had already taken place. The words loneliness, fear, confusion could not restore the lost trust. "Emma," he said softly, "love does not tolerate secret games. It cannot exist if one of us is living a lie." She looked up. There was guilt, fear, and the realization that she had lost control. "Michael, the words stuttered. "I didn't mean to hurt you." He took a deep breath. "Trust is hurt, Emma, and it's hard to fix." They sat in silence, and for the first time in weeks, the silence between them was complete. not empty, but saturated with a truth that could no longer be hidden. Michael understood that now a new stage of their relationship was beginning. Emma realized that no amount of excuses would help, and although this evening did not decide their future, it laid the foundation for an honest dialogue. Inside Michael, there was a feeling that the truth was liberating, even though it hurt. He was no longer blind, no longer a victim of guesswork. He knew, and this knowledge became the first step towards understanding how to proceed and how not to repeat the mistakes of the past. After the night Michael revealed all the evidence, Emma couldn't calm down. She was sitting on the couch, her hands clenched into fists, her eyes were wet, and her breathing was uneven. Her every move seemed deliberate, but inside she was like a volcano about to erupt. Fear came first. The fear of losing Michael, the fear of the consequences, the fear of the truth that cannot be hidden. He knows. He saw everything. He understands. I can't pretend anymore. She tried to speak, but the words were confused. Michael, I didn't mean to. The voice was shaking. Didn't want what? What is it? He asked softly. His tone was calm, but there was a heavy expectation in it. Emma lowered her eyes. She realized that excuses were no longer valid. All those little lies she trusted backfired on her. I'm lonely sometimes, and I was looking for attention. She whispered. You were looking for attention by hiding it from me, Michael said. Michael's words were not an accusation. They were a reflection of the truth that Emma herself was afraid to admit. And that reflection hit harder than any scream. A feeling of guilt arose inside her, but at the same time, a habit of justifying her actions. She wanted to explain herself, but she understood that every word about the reasons only confirms her betrayal. I didn't think, she began again, that it would be so destructive. Michael stared at her in silence. He saw fear, confusion, and the first signs of understanding that she herself was confused by her own actions. Emma felt the earth of her familiar world crumbling under her feet. Every step she takes, every smile, every little lie is now clear evidence. For the first time, she realized that she would not be able to return to her previous innocent life. Her heart was pounding, and her thoughts were racing. What to do? How to fix it? How to regain trust? But an inner voice was saying, this is no longer a matter of correction. It's a matter of understanding what's lost forever. For the first time, Emma felt that her familiar world was her own web of illusions. And now that network has broken, leaving in its place an emptiness and a weight of guilt. Michael sat next to her, not giving any sign that he was in pain. He saw her reaction, but he didn't interfere. He understood. She has to go through it herself, realize the consequences, feel the weight of betrayal and lies. Emma sat down silently, trembling with inner tension. There was panic in her eyes, but also understanding. She's facing the truth for the first time. And this understanding was painful, unbearable, but necessary. That night, Emma realized for the first time that betrayal destroys not only relationships, but also the identity of the person who cheats. And that now any words will be too late if no action is taken to correct the consequences. Emma sat across from Michael, clutching the hem of her sweatshirt in her hands, as if that could keep her from falling into the abyss of her own guilt. She took deep breaths, trying to collect her thoughts, because she knew that if she said the wrong word now, everything would completely collapse. Michael, she began softly. I want to explain. He nodded without interrupting. His gaze was calm, almost emotionless, but it was this restraint that made her feel the weight of every thought. I know it sounds terrible, she continued, and maybe that's not an excuse. But I felt lonely. You were busy with work, and I tried to be there for you. But there was something empty inside. And when I met Lucas, she trailed off, squeezing her hands tighter. Michael listened attentively, without interrupting, watching every little emotion on her face. He saw how fear and guilt intertwined with an attempt to justify himself. Lucas, he didn't force me to do anything I didn't want to do, Emma continued. But I allowed myself to seek the attention that I was missing. I didn't think it would hurt you so deeply that it would destroy us. Michael took a deep breath. He wasn't going to shout or accuse. He just wanted to understand the motives so that he could see the whole truth. Emma, he said softly, the truth is that trust is the foundation of everything. You weren't just looking for attention. You've been hiding a part of your life, and that's cheating. Even if you didn't do it out of anger, it's a betrayal. Emma nodded. her eyes filling with tears. I know, and I'm scared that I've ruined everything. I wanted to be honest, but I was afraid of losing you, and I trapped myself. She paused, unable to say more. The words in her head were chaotic, discordant. Every excuse, every fear, all merged into one huge wall of despair. Michael watched as her emotions raged, but inwardly remained composed. He understood that what was more important now was not anger, but understanding what had happened, and that now actions, not words, will determine their future. I hear you, Emma, he said at last. But it's one thing to hear. Understanding is different, and I need time to process it all. You gave me the facts, and now I know the whole truth. Emma took a deep breath, relieved but also in pain. Her first attempt to explain herself had ended. She realized that explanations don't undo the consequences, but they help her realize the gravity of her actions. The silence that followed her words was thick, almost palpable. She reminded him that their relationship would never be the same again, and that only actions could determine their future fate. For the first time, Emma felt that being honest is not just about admitting mistakes, but also the beginning of a path to understanding, correction, and possible redemptive revenge. Michael was sitting alone in his room, with all the documents, messages, and screenshots confirming Emma's infidelity spread out on the table in front of him. It was quiet around him, but a real storm was raging inside him. Every cell in his body screamed with betrayal, and his heart burned with a sense of bitterness. He remembered every moment in recent months, dinners together, smiles, weekends together, and each of these memories was now tinged with a different, bitter color. Emma was there, but her thoughts and feelings went to Lucas. How could she? He whispered to himself. I trusted her, and she used that trust. Michael felt resentment and anger mingle with pain. He understood that acting in hot pursuit would destroy everything completely, but his inner rage pushed him to take decisive steps. He closed his eyes and began mentally replaying all the options. Direct conflict is a break with accusations and shouting. Fast, but devastating. Forgiveness is an attempt to save a family, but with the condition of full control over the situation. Risky and almost impossible after revealing the betrayal. Revenge is subtle, thought out to show the consequences of cheating without destroying yourself emotionally. He understood that any action has consequences, and that an impulsive move would destroy not only Emma, but himself. Michael got up and went to the window. Behind the glass is the evening city, cars, passers-by, the light of lanterns. At that moment, for the first time, he felt clarity. He was no longer a victim, he owned the truth. And with that truth comes power, the power to choose how to react. I don't want to be just an offended husband, he said to himself quietly. I want her to understand the price of her betrayal, so that she can see that trust is not a toy. He sat back down at the table. He began to make a plan, step by step, so that every fact of betrayal is clear and inevitable. Not revenge for the sake of malice, but a lesson that Emma must learn. Michael understood that emotions are like flames. If released without control, they will burn everything. He must act coldly, prudently, and with a clear purpose. There was a struggle going on inside him. Love for the woman he had once adored, and the realization that this love had been betrayed. Pain mixed with anger, despair with determination. But there is order in this chaos. He knows what to do, and now everything depends on time and wisdom. He opened his laptop again, looked through the evidence, and thought through the sequence of actions. Every step was calculated, every move was thought out. For the first time, Michael realized that true strength is not in shouting or threatening, but in controlling the situation and emotions. He fell asleep late that night, feeling that tomorrow a new chapter of their relationship would begin, a chapter where betrayal would have its consequences, and the truth would become the main tool. The next day, Michael woke up with a clear purpose. Pain seethed inside him, but it was now mixed with cold determination. He understood that a direct conflict with shouting and accusations would destroy them both, and a calmly ignoring attitude would not let Emma feel the consequences. He took a notebook and began to write. At first, there were chaotic thoughts on the sheets, emotions, resentments, images of betrayal. But gradually they became organized into a consistent plan. The goal, to show Emma the consequences of her betrayal, without destroying herself. but by making her consciously feel the severity of her actions. Step 1. Information control. He decided that every message she sent, every meeting she had, would be closely monitored. He will not interfere directly, but will document all her actions. Step 2. Influence on her illusions. Michael knew that Emma was used to hiding her actions behind a mask of her usual life. He decided to gradually destroy this mask, creating situations where every lie would become obvious. Not openly, but through indirect evidence that she will see for herself. Step 3. Talk about trust. He planned to use every opportunity for a dialogue about trust, moral values, and honesty, without accusations, but with facts, so that Emma herself would feel the weight of her betrayal. Step 4. Consequences through actions. He thought through minor restrictions and checks, questions about her routes, requests to be transparent with cases, but without direct control. Every action should show that trust is no longer free. Michael understood that revenge was not rage, but a lesson she had to learn. He didn't want to humiliate Emma. He didn't want to destroy himself. He wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions and understand the value of trust. He wrote down the details, built a time frame, marked the moments when Emma was most vulnerable, when her habits could reveal the truth. Everything was thought out, like a chess game where every move counts. A sense of control was building inside Michael. He was no longer a victim, no longer a lost husband. He was an observer and a strategist. He knew that the revenge plan was not cruelty, but a tool to restore justice. As evening descended on the city, Michael went to bed with a sense of clarity and determination. The first step starts tomorrow. The first step that will show Emma that every action has consequences, and that betrayal never goes unnoticed. He closed his eyes, realizing that the moral lesson would not be for him, but for her, and this would give him inner peace and the opportunity to restore his own value. The next day, Michael acted calmly and confidently. He knew that Emma's emotions were a key tool. The first step was to show her that her lies would not go unnoticed, but without open accusations and shouting. When Emma left the store, he quietly suggested, "Let's check the customer delivery schedule for the last few days together." She raised an eyebrow, but agreed, thinking it was a routine job. Michael opened his laptop and carefully displayed a calendar showing her appointments and deliveries. "Look at this," he said calmly. "All orders coincide with your disappearance from the store." Emma froze. She tried to smile, but her eyes betrayed her anxiety. "Michael, this is—" she began, but the words stuck. He didn't interrupt her. He just kept showing the facts, every route, every hour, every match with the Kingston address. He let the document speak for him. "See, what is it?" he asked softly. "None of this is guesswork. This is the sequence of your actions." Emma felt the cold effect of the truth. She understood that the revenge plan was working. She herself was facing the consequences of her actions, without words of accusation, just the facts. Michael's next move was subtle, almost invisible. He left customer notifications, dates, and screenshots of messages in plain sight so that Emma could notice them herself, without pressure. He knew it was important that she felt the weight of her lies through her own awareness, not through his words. During the day, he asked simple, seemingly harmless questions. "Have you been to Kingston today? What are your plans for the evening?" Emma instinctively answered with the truth, realizing that nothing could be hidden now. Each question was gentle, but it pushed her towards an inner awareness of the consequences. In the evening, Emma sat down on the sofa with her head down. She understood that her secret actions were no longer a secret, and that every new day would show her the price of betrayal. Michael stared at her in silence, satisfied that the first step of his plan had worked. For the first time, she felt the severity of her actions, the moral pressure, and the consequences of betrayal. He did not say a word about punishment, did not shout or threaten. He let the facts speak for themselves. And Emma felt a lesson she would never forget. A sense of inner control was growing inside Michael. He saw how the effect manifested itself without cruelty, without violence, only through the pure truth and consistent actions. He knew that this was just the beginning, and the next steps would be even more revealing for Emma if she didn't change her behavior. The following days were an ordeal for Emma. Michael acted calmly, almost imperceptibly, but his every action was deliberate. It showed the truth without open accusations, making her feel the consequences herself. He began using the small details of everyday life to demonstrate that every action was recorded and analyzed. Emma, he said softly one day, I noticed that the last 3 deliveries coincided with your work exits. Michael, it's just a coincidence, she replied, trying to keep her tone casual. He didn't argue. He just showed her the documents on his laptop. Screenshots, notifications, the address Kingston 8. Everything was in front of her eyes. Anxiety grew inside Emma. She understood that the truth was coming to the surface without his words, without accusations, through simple facts. Then Michael gradually began to increase the psychological pressure. He asked Emma to schedule her appointments in advance, controlling the schedule, but he did it as a routine household chore. He left screenshots in a prominent place, which she accidentally stumbled upon, realizing the scale of the betrayal. He asked gentle but precise questions about her routes, unaware that she felt under surveillance and that her every step was now reflected in his knowledge. Emma began to notice that her every action was no longer hidden. She felt the moral pressure, the feeling that every decision has consequences, even if they seem like a small thing. In the evening, as she sat down to tea, Michael said quietly, Emma, I want you to understand one thing. Trust takes years to build, but it collapses instantly. And now your every action is reflected in our future. Those words weren't a shout. They weren't a threat. They were true, and Emma could feel their weight. Conflicting emotions raged inside her. Fear, guilt, an understanding of her own mistake, and a desire to fix the situation. It was the first time she had faced the full moral weight of betrayal. Michael watched her reaction. He knew that the effect had been achieved. Emma felt that the game was over, that her lies were no longer valid. And now the consequences are not abstract, but real, tangible, and inevitable.